Hi, it's Neil here, back again, and we're looking at the direct method and step down method. I want to take you through another example so you can really get an understanding of this. Is a great area where you can get 100% in the exam and at the same time really just understand what it means to allocate costs from one department to another. Now, the scenario for most of these questions on the direct method, step down method is we have service departments, and these service departments are looking after the operating departments. In other words, the operating departments cannot just operate on their own. They need the service departments for support. Cafeteria, so the cafeteria is there to feed the workers. Custodial, and that's security. Maybe it's part of maintenance. Other service departments could be human resource management. Other service departments could also be the accounting department or the information technology department. So there could be many service departments that we could allocate costs from to the operating departments. But in this case, here we have cafeteria and custodial. You are always told the actual costs that are incurred by these service departments. That comes from the accounting system. You've paid wages, you've paid rent, you've paid electricity, they've got their floor space, so you understand what the service department's costs are. That's very easy to get the information. You're also told what the general costs for the departments of the machining and assembly are before allocation at the same time. And generally in these questions you need to find out what is the allocation base, so you can allocate costs from one department to another. And so generally if you have more than one service department, they may give you more than one allocation base. And now in this case we have numbers of employees. They're employed by cafeteria, custodial. Also we have square feet occupied, okay? And then these information is given for all the departments here. And so the big question you need to think about before you do any allocation is to think about, okay, cafeteria, what causes the cafeteria to expend more resources for machining, more resources for assembly? What causes the resources of the cafeteria to be used more or less by the machining and assembly? You see, it's all about cause and effect. You know that, don't you? So that's straightforward, isn't it? Because if one department has more employees, they go into the cafeteria and they have lunch, or if they're doing overtime, they'll go into the cafeteria and have an evening meal. So we can immediately think that, okay, the allocation base that we're going to use to spread the cafeteria costs to the operating departments will be the number of employees that work in each of these operating departments. And immediately we can see there's 20 in one, there's 30 in another, 20 and 30, 50. So we can say 40% for machining and 30% for assembly. You know that, don't you? All right, so what about custodial? Custodial is about security. It's about people walking around making sure that everything is locked up, making sure that there's no theft, making sure that everyone is in the right place. People are not allowed to go to places where they should not go. All right, so is there some way that custodial expenses will be higher for one department or another? Again, cause effect relationship we're trying to find here. And yes, you guessed it, it's the number of square feet occupied. So if the assembly department is 50,000 feet, in other words, it's double the size of the machining department, you could imagine, you could explain the cause effect relationship. Well, the assembly, it's much larger, it needs more security, it needs more inspections, it needs more people walking around, it needs more locks and fittings and different things to actually safeguard various assets and to make sure, and passwords and things like that, to make sure people cannot go where they should not go. Compared to machining, it's only 25,000 feet, so you can imagine that assembly is going to get a larger proportion of the custodial resources than machining. So even before you start to do calculations, you need to think. Step one, you need to think, what is the nature of the relationship in terms of the resources that are likely to be consumed from the service departments by the operating departments? And then that will help guide you in terms of the choice of the allocation base. So immediately you can see with custodial, we'll probably be allocating, total square feet is 75,000, so therefore assembly is going to get 2/3 and machining is going to get 1/3. So let's have a look at the calculations. I think you've worked it out already, haven't you? See? Okay, so direct method, we want to allocate cafeteria custodial to machining and assembly. So the big question here is, which do you go first? Do you go custodial first or do you cafeteria? It's possible to do custodial, that is allocate that to both machining assembly and then cafeteria. Well, it doesn't matter with the direct method. With the step down method, you need to make that choice. But with the direct method, it doesn't matter. We can start with one, then we start to the next. So let's have a look at cafeteria for the start, shall we? So cafeteria, we're going to allocate 360,000 and we want to allocate 40%, that is 20 out of 50, to machining. Therefore, we're allocating how much to assembly? It's going to be 60%. Yes, you got it. And we're using the allocation base of employees down here. You've got that, haven't you? So let's have a look at the allocation that goes to assembly. It's going to be 20%. That is 30 divided by 50. 30/50 is 60%. 60% of 360 is 216,000. So there we have the full allocation of cafeteria over to machining and assembly. There you go. All right, so what about custodial? Custodial, what is the percentages? It's 1/3, 2/3. So 90,000 custodial. So 1/3 is going across to machining. Guess what? Assembly, yeah, you've got it, haven't you? Let's have a look. It's going to be 2/3. But here's the precise calculation. So it's important to do the workings so you make sure you don't make simple errors in the exam. So the total square feet occupied is 75,000 feet between the two departments. Machining is 25,000 of that. So 25,000 divided by 75,000 is your 1/3. And so times 90 gives you 30,000. So let's have a look at assembly. Again, you've got it. 50,000 divided by 75,000 gives you 60,000, and there you go. And there you have, we have actually now allocated custodial to machining and assembly. There you have the direct method. Okay, what about the step down method? Now this requires a decision at the beginning. Remember, step one was just orientating yourself as to the basis for which resources are being used by the operating departments. So we agreed that cafeteria, the resources being used of the cafeteria will be a number of employees that are employed by the operating departments. The resources being used by custodial is likely to be the square feet space. You know that. All right, so just to remind you where we are in this question. But with the step down method, there's a part 2 that you need to answer before you do anything. That is, which goes first? In other words, do we do cafeteria? Do we do cafeteria first and say, okay, cafeteria is providing more resources to custodial? Or do we go custodial first and let's say custodial is providing more resources to cafeteria? You could argue both ways. With custodial, you need to secure the cafeteria. You need to put locks on the doors. You need to have security there to allow only employees to go into the cafeteria. We don't want people walking off the street going into the cafeteria and getting a free meal. That's what they do in the canteens at the universities. You know that. All right. So that's one way you could argue for custodial should go first. You could argue cafeteria should go first. Why? Because it provides more resources to custodial. Why? $360,000 cafeteria. Custodial is only 90,000. So on the basis of economics, that is the economic benefits that one department gives the other, we would use that as a basis to start with cafeteria first. Then we will go to custodial second. All right, so now we've agreed that we'll work with cafeteria. Why? Because it's the economics. 360,000 versus 90,000 dictates that we should allocate this to custodial, machining and assembly. Okay, so how are we going to do that? Well, now we are allocating the cafeteria across 3 departments, and that's what we're doing here. 3 departments. Yes. So now instead of that 20, 30, 50 employees, now we have 60 employees. And you can work out the percentages, can't you? 1/6, 2/6, and 3/6. So 1/6 will be so much. 2/6 is going to be 1/3. 3/6 is going to be 1/2. So therefore, what have you left with? 1/6 here. All right, so when we work out the calculation, immediately you can start to realize, that's going to be a no-brainer in allocating that across. But with the step method, what we're going to do is we've got to go one step further. Once we allocate this 360,000 to custodial, then what we're going to do is we're going to add that allocation to custodial to the 90,000, and then we're going to allocate that total in remaining in custodial to machining and assembly. That's what we mean by step down method. Custodial has to wait until it gets an allocation from cafeteria, then we can allocate it to machining and assembly. You get the point, don't you? So let's go to the calculations, which are probably already worked out, but the important thing here is to just get the intuitive sense of what is the flow and what you have to do. So we have cafeteria. We want to allocate that across. It provides more service than custodial. That is the basis for which we are starting with cafeteria. And so we're going to allocate 60,000. Why 60,000? That's 1/6. How do we know 1/6? Well, we've got 10 employees divided by 60 employees here. That's 60 across machining, assembly, and custodial. There's 60 employees here. So 1/6 is 60,000. What about machining? They're going to get 2/6, which is 1/3, 120,000. What about assembly? Well, they're going to get half, which is 3/6 of those 60 employees, 180,000. Now we have allocated cafeteria 360,000 to custodial, machining, and assembly. Yes, so now we've done this allocation and we can move to custodial now. What we need to do now is add the custodial 90,000, that's the costs already incurred by custodial, plus the $60,000 allocated from cafeteria. So now we're allocating from custodial how much? You got it, 150,000. Yes. So we've got 150,000. That's the original custodial cost plus the 60,000 allocated from the cafeteria. Yes. So what are we going to do now? We're basically following the direct method for the custodial allocation because it's second in line and in the step down method. So how are we going to allocate that? Again, we're using a square feet, 25,000 out of the 75,000. That gives us 50,000 to machining. Guess what? How many is going to go to assembly? Yes, you guessed it. It's going to be 100,000 to assembly. Quite easily done, isn't it? Okay, so now we have the allocation of custodial. That has gone now to machining and assembly. 50,000 here, 100,000 there. There you got it. There you go. Quite easily done. There's our step down method. We've used the allocation base of square feet occupied. So in summary here with the step down method, it's about number one, working out which of these departments provides the greater economic benefit. And we decided it is the cafeteria. Number two, we need to decide, okay, what is the total allocation base that we're working with the remaining departments. It wasn't just machining and assembly, it is now machining, assembly, and custodial. It wasn't just 50 employees, it is now 50 employees plus 10 employees in custodial, 60 employees. So now you have a new allocation formula to allocate that 360,000. So that's what we did number two. We had to actually change the allocation formula. Number three, what did we do then? We had to add up the custodial because now it actually received an allocation from cafeteria, and so the new custodial costs to be allocated is going to be 150,000, and then that was allocated to remaining departments, machining and assembly, using basically the direct method. So there you have 1, 2, 3. That's how you do the step down method. Catch you in the class, and thank you for watching. Bye for now.